So with that, I want to introduce Mackenzie and Melissa, and we can't wait to hear about the work that you guys are doing in Laconia.
James, and will you be putting our PowerPoint up?
Oh, that's one. There we go.
So I also downloaded the internet clicker. Let's see if it works.
Yay.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So go ahead, James.
What was I going to say? Oh, just one quick thing. If you're not able to see the slide deck, we've also put the slide deck and Shia put it in the chat, so you can also pull it up there as well. Sorry about that, Mackenzie. Go ahead.
That's fine. Yeah, it is really blurry on our end as well. Also, as we're talking, anybody with questions, please feel free to interrupt us. We don't want to be talking at you. We want to make sure this is helpful. So my name is Mackenzie. I am the director here of the Office of School Wellness, and I'm the grants administrator for the district. I have been here about 7 years. And prior to that, I was at the New Hampshire State Department of Education for 8 years as an education consultant in the Bureau of Special Education.
And hi, I'm Melissa Piccini. I've been a social worker at the middle school for about 5 years. Prior to that, I was a child protective service worker with the state DCYF, which is child protection, which some of you have different acronyms, but same idea.
And she was also at the high school as a social worker. She was split between multiple buildings for quite some time.
That's true. Forget about that.
She tries to forget that.
I try to forget that.
So our office, we really have 5 different elements that we focus on in our work. And this is early childhood all the way through graduation. Essentially, my office works to support the social, emotional, mental, physical, and well-being of students, staff, and families. And we specifically focus on promoting early childhood, SEL, promoting mental, emotional, and behavioral health, connecting families, schools, and communities, preventing behavioral health problems, including substance misuse, and creating safe and violence-free schools. So when we saw this opportunity arise, it fit very perfectly with what we had already started sort of as a groundwork doing. So there are 6 different things today as we go through that I think, in my mind, are sort of tangible takeaways. So as we're going through and talking, some things to kind of look for. Later, I'll get into our ACEs screener and how we took the normal universal ACEs screener and we modified it to fit sort of how we're working with families. And so not doing the screener with children, but with families. We utilize social media, as the other district was just talking about as well, electronic communications and our websites pretty heavily to provide real-time and ongoing resources for staff and families. We've used it pretty heavily, especially during COVID, to help us get information out virtually. We have about 20% of our population who is in remote learning full-time. The other 80% of our population have been in a hybrid model up until this past Monday. We are currently all back in full, except for that 20% in remote. So prior to last week, we had 80% of our students one day and the other half on another day. It's just been pretty crazy and really hard for kids to wrap their heads around. Our community resource map, I'm going to show you in a little bit. It is something that we developed with our community partners to provide a single place for families to find contact and general information about all of our available resources in the community and in our surrounding communities. And Melissa uses this on a daily basis almost with families. And so she can talk about how she does that when we get there. 3 other things to kind of think about as we're talking today. Prior to COVID, we had a lot of tier 2 interventions that we were doing and or starting to do. And we have since sort of had to push them down into a tier 1, almost like a universal prevention intervention, if you will. Examples of mindfulness, brain science, stress management. That might have been something that we did with a group of 20 kids at the middle school last year. Now we're doing it grade level, complete grade level and class level, because of all of the rises in stress and anxiety that we're seeing because of COVID and everything the pandemic has brought on our students and their families. Really looking at staff supports, making sure that we are kind of ramping up what we provide for our educators, and also making sure that we're teaching them about self-care and what that looks like and supporting them in that area. Looking at group and individual supports for social, emotional, mental, and physical wellness of our staff. So we'll get to that as well. And lastly, that level of prevention work with the community, how we've done virtual trainings for families, webinars, modules, all different kinds of things, and how we're partnering differently with our community partners. We developed what we call ACERT, it's Adverse Childhood Experiences Response Team, and it is a partnership with the school district, the police department, and our Family Resource Center, as well as every other community partner in sort of like a second to third tier referral process. And so those are the things that we're going to get into that I think are really tangible things that you could maybe consider taking away from this. So just really quickly, the way that we approach our work here, I'm sure many of you have heard of the whole child and what does that mean? So for us, we really define it so that everyone in our community knows what we're talking about. And this is an example. We look at every dimension of wellness for students and staff, for any human really. And so we teach people, what does that mean and why is it important? And this is an example. When someone is emotionally well, they have high self-esteem, self-respect, they can balance their emotional states, can cope with normal life changes, ability to participate in positive interpersonal relationships. When someone is socially well, they have self-confidence, a balance between social and personal time, ability to work in a team. When someone is personally well, you have a well-developed sense of purpose. You can be reflective. You know the difference between right and wrong. You have the ability to express and feel empathy and explain beliefs. And so we really define these out for everyone to kind of explain what the whole child really means and why we're coming at our work in this way. So I think most of you are also using MTSS or a version of it, a multi-tiered system of support. I can't see any of your faces to see thumbs up or not, but I'm seeing a head nod. Okay. So, I mean, for us, really, we started with the PBIS framework and we just kind of built out from there. We anchor all of our work into that evidence-based framework. We built teams in every building, universal or primary, looking at the whole school, secondary or targeted, or tier 2, looking at sort of the group level intervention. And then tier 3, which is the really highly individualized and intense supports for students who aren't really finding success with just what we have at tier 1 or tier 2. So we took that framework and we started embedding mental health, substance use supports, and trauma-informed care into that. And we didn't just do it for students, but we've paralleled it with families in the community at large, and really just taken that basic concept of what is a universal support for students within a school community and what can that look like for the community at large. And so we've just been taking that work and we just keep expanding it. Okay, Melissa.
All right, thank you. So we have been using mindfulness tools in education individually and in groups, and in the elementary school levels. We are also, our teachers and social workers and school counselors are going into classrooms, and it's sort of more conducive in the younger grades to do it as a whole class. The kids love it. Sometimes it's just listening to music or breathing, just being aware of your breath and that sort of thing. In the middle school, we do it at smaller groups and even individuals. If a student is really struggling and just can't, like they just need a break. And we talk about the different kinds of mindfulness breathing and using other tools like the chime bowl and that sort of thing. And I think they're old enough at that stage to sort of get a little education about how their breathing connects to other things that they're experiencing, and sort of starting to figure out how to identify their physical responses to stress before it really escalates to a point where they're not functioning anymore.
So the other thing that we've done at the elementary level is we identified mindful schools. That's just simply the place that we sought training in the district, and all of the social workers, myself, a handful of other staff, such as our school counselors, have become certified in a variety of different courses through them. That's just who we chose to use. They're by no means the only ones. What we then did at the elementary level in particular is we started to blend the mindfulness. And we had started to do this in tier 2 groups, and now we do it tier 1. And because of COVID, we found that it's really needed kind of across a lot of our grades. And so we bought replicas of brains, and we taught kids how to build brains with Play-Doh. And we use the Mind Up curriculum as part of this to teach kids what is fight, flight, and what does all of that mean, so that they understand what the amygdala is and what's happening in their brain when they feel these things. so that it gives them voice, sort of this concept of name it to tame it. And so we have push in curriculums that we're doing across our elementary schools. And it's typically like a counselor, social worker, and even a teacher kind of pairing up together and going through and teaching this with kids. And we've found that that's really been important to help kids to start taking control of what they're feeling and understanding what they're feeling. Another example that we use, and this is at the elementary level, it can be done in middle school, but we primarily do it at elementary. It's called zones of regulation. And I can send our slides out to all of you. I embed links in the bottom of the slide so you can actually find the information online. This started again as a tier 2 intervention that now is school-wide in one of our elementary schools. It's just the way that they operate and help kids to understand and to regulate their emotions. Another example is responsive classroom. Again, it can be used at middle school, but we only use it at the elementary level. There are some districts that don't believe that PBIS and responsive classroom can live together, but we disagree and they can. And I have a really nice white paper that I remember when we were first sharing this with staff, trying to help them understand we can do both and it's okay. They actually pair really well together. And it's just another way in which we're really trying to target that SEL part and that sort of positive culture and climate.
I think if I could just interject, one of the things we didn't put in the slide, but another curriculum that we used was Neurologic. And some of you may have heard of that, but it's a curriculum. The author is Kathy Van Horn. And you can buy the curriculum workbooks for students. And we've been doing it with classrooms at a time. So like around 15 students. And it really just, it just provides really nice tools to create a trauma-informed classroom. And so the teachers sort of get their professional development around being trauma-informed, but then the students get to learn some tools with this program. And it really empowers them to learn about their own brains and how they respond to trauma and how their own body and their own brain have the capacity to heal from trauma. So, you know, and sometimes we would do things like, you may have heard of calm.com, CALM. So that's just another resource.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Someone else uses Neurologic.
Awesome. Yeah. So, and we found we kind of have to modify it depending on, because it's grade 6 through 12. But so for like younger kids, we might simplify it a little bit for them. But the bottom line is they come away and they are like amazed at what their own body can do and how it responds to trauma and how they can actually control some of that stuff.
And I know, and it was kind of a misstep on our part not to include Neurologic in here because we spent quite a bit of time. Some of their resources are really applicable for elementary as well. And so we had our counselors spend about a year actually kind of looking with the social workers at that curriculum and how we can make it developmentally appropriate for elementary schools as well. Good catch. Okay, so for us, as we really have continued to kind of invest in relationships and knowing that kids don't just need one trusted adult, they need numerous trusted adults. One is like the bare minimum. We just really started to educate our staff on the importance of relationships. To that end, we knew that we had to support our staff better. Essentially, how can we expect our staff to show up every day and be the best version of themselves for kids if they're not taking care of themselves or if they don't have healthy relationships? So carrying the weight, essentially, if you will, of the work that we do, Melissa's on the ground, the nitty gritty. She's really taking home a lot of heavy stuff every day. And so really thinking about what is vicarious trauma, and what does that look like and how is that impacting our staff? And I think we can all agree that COVID has just elevated all of that for everyone. So
I would agree. I'm only 19 and I have white hair. Just saying.
She's lying.
I'm kidding. That was a lie.
She's not 19. So we really have spent some time educating our staff, knowing that we needed to invest more heavily in their social, emotional, and mental health and well-being. We've actually stopped and taken time to teach them what is self-care, what does it look like, and how can we provide that. Oh, Rebecca liked your joke. And how can we provide that for staff at no cost to them? There's also that piece. So we really tried to think outside of the box in that way.
So in addition to, you know, the scheduled staff development kind of things, you know, we have, you know, I have teachers that come into my office and they, you know, want to talk about a student who came to them and they, you know, spent the night in their car last night and they don't know what they're going to eat for dinner and that sort of thing. And so at that moment, the first thing I'll often address is the teacher and how they're coping with that information that they just received, because it can be traumatizing for teachers to hear that from a student that they care so much about. So I'm sort of addressing both of these things at once, and then, connecting that family and that student to resources. But a lot of times, the concern and the worry they come in with, I don't want them taking that home with them when they go home to their own families. That's how people burn out fast. So we're working really hard to make sure that our teachers are taking care of themselves. I think this past year, especially, it's been critical. I think you're going to talk about the work Gina's doing.
Yeah, I was going to get to that, but okay. It was just making me kind of think about this. What we're showing you are just examples of resources that we use that are publicly out there for free. This is from the National Child Traumatic Support Network. I mean, all of this stuff is out there for free. We don't reinvent the wheel. But in addition to what Melissa is talking about is the concept of boundaries, and us really having to work with staff around boundaries in the sense of educators by nature are caregivers. Some of us are more likely to have sort of a savior complex where we really feel like we need to save this child in that moment. And if we don't step in, we won't be able to do that. And that's a hard line for teachers when they know what kids are going home with. So having a social worker that they can come sit and talk this through with helps to kind of bring them back to, okay, I can't cross that line. There are resources out there. I know we have the people in our building to do it, while I'm also going to take care of myself at the same time. So another thing that we did for the first time this year, and we actually did this on our very first day of school with our staff. It was one of our opening professional development days. And this is just an example of the things that we were talking to them about. We really felt like we needed to teach teachers, what does anxiety feel like for you? So we're always talking about the kids, but we took the time on that day to really talk about our staff and to help them understand these are the psychological and physical symptoms and or signs of anxiety. And our opening day this year was the first time that we really did something like this. And it really was because of COVID. It really was a response to what everyone has been going through because of the pandemic.
I think also we're so fortunate. We have an amazing nurse, full-time nurse in our middle school, and she is very trauma informed. So she'll see some kids, like same student, 5 times a day with the headache and the stomach ache and whatever. And she's trained to be able to recognize when some of that might be anxiety, and to how to help the student kind of pull that together to be able to go back to class so they're not missing learning time, but also making sure they feel heard and that their feelings are important. And she works really closely with me in our guidance department, so that if the child needs some follow-up after that, and if it's a recurring thing, then we are going to reach out to the family and have a family meeting. Best practice, and what I love to do is meet families face-to-face, and you learn so much more about them. A lot of the times, most of the times, we're doing Zoom at this point. It's better than nothing. But that's where we really wrap around and bring the families into it and make referrals to mental health services.
I know the other district that was chatting before us was speaking about, sort of the concept of electronic communications. And we have a training and marketing coordinator who works out of my office that really not funded through this grant, funded from a different grant that we have that kind of pairs nicely, but we heavily focus on getting that information out and in as many ways as we can. Social media platforms. We have an electronic newsletter that goes out to the community at wide. We have internal newsletters that go out. We use all of our websites and we post those things as well. This is just an example of one of our newsletters from last year and it's like 4 to 6 pages long. This is just the front one, but we really try to engage staff in that. So prior to this, we'll put out, send us your healthy recipes, send us your healthy at-home workout tips, because at that time we couldn't go anywhere. Send us these things. And we would do raffles with the staff to really kind of help get them motivated. We had all of these challenges. Send us a selfie of you doing your best at-home workout, or what you do to get out in nature during the pandemic. And so we did a lot of that through social media and raffling to really keep staff engaged. We always highlight a community partner as well in our newsletters to keep our community engaged in this work, whether it is one of our local gyms, a Reiki master, a yoga instructor, a nutritionist, all kinds of people that we've engaged in that way. And that's an easy thing to do. So another thing that we do that I feel is a little unique to us, I don't know of any districts around us that do anything like this. For those people who, through physical activity, that's how they keep themselves centered and grounded and anchored in that sort of self-care world, we offer every week, every Wednesday morning at 5:30 at no cost to staff, There's no sign up, you just show up. Obviously, because of COVID, there's physical distancing and a lot of restrictions. And so our numbers we can accommodate are much lower. But we offer workouts in the morning. Once a week after school, we do it in 4-week sessions. So 1 month is spin, 1 month is boxing, 1 month is better posture, yoga, etc. And we do that in a sign up. So we put it out and the first 10 people that sign up get to come for free, again, at no cost to them at one of our local gyms that we partner with. And we have found tremendous success with that.
People love that. It's fantastic.
Yep. Other things that we've done for people who aren't necessarily so into the physical aspect of self-care, we hired, again, really as a result of COVID, a health and wellness practitioner. And we were able to hire her this year using local funding. I was able to get enough support from the superintendent's office when we were in quarantine to say, this is a need, like a really heavy need that we have to support our staff. And so we hired a health and wellness practitioner who happened to have just retired from the district. She's a nurse. She also taught all of our nursing courses at our Career and Tech Center. So she's really well known in our community. She does after school yoga. We actually do a lot of that virtually now. Again, all of these things are free. I'll show you what the GRACE project is in a minute. She's created modules around stress management and coping mechanisms that we have on our YouTube channel. And then she also goes into whole classroom settings and teaches these things to students as well. But she also goes in and just does it for staff. So at one of our elementary schools, I think it's every Tuesday, they have a voluntary faculty meeting before school. It's not required. It's an opportunity to participate in these things. And every time Gina's there, almost all of them are there. And they're doing tapping, which is emotional freedom technique. They're doing Reiki, they're doing yoga, breathing exercises, meditation. She does also professional development for nurses and for others that she can provide CEUs. And she does one-to-one with our staff. So we have had quite a few staff members that are struggling pretty significantly. So Gina her name is Gina. We did it in a way where it's like, she has a sign up. Here are her hours and you virtually sign up to come see her, whether it's via Zoom or in person. And she does one-to-one healing modalities with that person, depending on who they are, what their issue is and what they're struggling with. If need be, she refers them out to community resources as well. Anything you want to add about that?
No, we're just so fortunate to have her. And I also, we talk about community referrals a lot. We are fortunate to have a very resource-rich community here. So we almost always have somewhere we can refer somebody if they have a need that goes beyond what we can provide.
And so this is the GRACE project that really Gina developed, and my office has been supporting this. She does it in partnership with one of our school counselors. And it is, for better lack of a word, really looking at that spiritual part of wellness. I think it's really easy for people to focus on the social, emotional, the physical, the occupational, the intellectual, the more accepted dimensions of wellness, but we're really looking at that spiritual side of wellness as well. And so we put this out there and we've had unbelievable responses from teachers and from staff. We have wait lists every time we put it out. It's a 4-week after school, once a week. It's holistic wellness. And there's all kinds of things that happen, whether it's Reiki or yoga. And it's just been off the charts successful. So that's another thing that we do. Again, free to staff. We pay all the fees for the people who provide it and for the space with our partners. So I know because I can't control the PowerPoint, I can't show you this link, but I'm going to tell you what it is. And again, you'll be able to find any of this stuff on our website already. But we have some things that we linked up on our website that we encourage our staff to use. This link in particular takes you to, it's the Georgetown Center for School Wellbeing. I don't know if any of you have heard of them. They're awesome. They have created a teacher wellbeing workbook that we have used. I came across it last year at the National School Mental Health Conference. It was one of the last conferences I went to in person before we were on lockdown. And they presented it and it was just incredible. And it's this pretty lengthy workbook. It doesn't touch the spiritual side of it, but the social, emotional, physical, intellectual, and occupational. It has assessments. It's a workbook. It's got activities, how to really focus on your self-care and build a plan for yourself. So just another example of how we don't reinvent the wheel. So Gina, who we were talking about, is our health and wellness practitioner. She does a lot of the same things she's doing for staff, for students, which in the beginning wasn't really our intention when we hired her, but we have just found that it's such a need and it's really the same thing. So she goes into classrooms, she does push-in support in that way. She runs group interventions with students. She does one-to-one support with students as well. Again, doing some of those alternative and integrated healing therapies. She helps them think about lifestyle choices, stress management, and she's just been a huge success, biggest bang for our buck, I feel like, in this work because of COVID.
Yeah, we sometimes you have a student who you maybe make a referral to mental health, but that whole process can take a month or so and they need more immediate help, or you just can't get the parents' permission to make a referral to mental health. So we utilize Gina's services, and she has worked with some students who come away and they're like, when can I see her again? To be 12 years old or 13 and learning about, tapping or being able to tap and, kind of tap into your own resource within yourself to calm yourself. And she's such a calming person that kids just love it. So that's been another way that we've utilized her, being in the building with us.
And I'm her supervisor, and I can barely get appointments with her for us to have our normal meetings because her schedule is so packed up right now.
Carlos, that's a great question. He says, can grade school age children went away. Hold on.
Let me find it.
Recognize what their triggers are as far as managing their anxiety? That's a great question. So one of the things that when we, the elementary schools use the zones of regulation, and they can learn it in very simple terms, such as, when you're feeling angry. So helping them identify that, but also what does your belly feel like right now? What is your, what do your hands feel like now? Are you clenching your fist? Are you sweating? So we could just kind of help them recognize those really basic physical responses. And in that way, they can start to figure out what their triggers are. I mean, we have 6-year-olds that walk around saying, you know what, I have that feeling in my belly right now. I just need to go sit in the corner by myself. So they are able to learn that.
We're trying to not only just teach kids to recognize their triggers, but also the staff to recognize their triggers, so that not only are we teaching how do you self-regulate, but so that teachers know it as well. So the teachers know, okay, Johnny needs to go sit with the counselor and do his thing for 10 minutes. So we're trying to really wrap around in that way. This slide is just simply an example of a 4-part virtual series that we provided for families earlier in the year. This is back in October, all around trauma in November, all around trauma-informed stuff, and really acknowledging that this is a really hard time and helping parents to support their kids in the middle of a pandemic. And so really trying to expand the way we're supporting families. We partnered with a psychologist to provide that. This is just another example. We have an electronic newsletter that goes out to the entire community. So it's not just the school district, it's the police department, the Family Resource Center, our mental health center, and 10,000 other community partners who all have different pages in here. So we use that as a conduit to get information out. This is an easy one that we put out. 6 ways to help reduce the chance that your teenage child will drink, use drugs, or engage in other risky behaviors. For us in Laconia, substance misuse is at the very top of one of our issues that we struggle with in the community. And there's a very generational trickle-down effect with that. So we're also, like I said, during our opening day, and you can talk about this a little bit, we started teaching teachers to better recognize in their students, especially as they're coming back from remote learning, what does anxiety look like in students and what can the teachers do about it?
Yeah, we've had, I would say just the number of students that we've had, coming into the office or the guidance suite and needing some extra support has just risen exponentially. And now as of last week, we're all in. So where they've been having maybe half of their class in at a time on any given day, now everyone's back. And although this is like it was before COVID, it's been a year and they're not used to that many kids in the classroom and that many kids in the hallway. So we have seen a lot of some negative attention seeking, and we're just really working hard with them and the teachers to identify that and give them opportunities to take breaks and go outside or help them be able to recognize that in themselves. And we just have a great team with the people listed here that are all on board with helping students kind of figure that out, turn it around and get back to class.
And that is the gist of our teams in all of our buildings, those staff members, school counselor, behavior support specialist. The only exception is at our elementaries, we don't have a licensed alcohol and drug counselor or a mental health clinician. We did try having a community mental health clinician come in and do school-based mental health in our elementary schools about 6 years ago. And we just really didn't find it to be successful. What we really found was that if we weren't able to do child-parent psychotherapy, we really weren't shifting the needle in the family dynamic, which is really what you need to focus on at that level. So for us, we kind of had to pull back and look at other ways like social workers at the elementary level to be the conduit to get those resources in place for the families. Okay. I keep wanting to touch someone else to click. So this is a big tangible, and I am more than happy to email this to anyone who is interested in it. We worked with a psychologist to take the adverse childhood experiences, so that ACEs questionnaire that's publicly out there, it's been used forever, and we
Their video may have stopped.
with the family.
There we go.
Uh-oh.
What?
Yeah, your video and audio stopped as you began talking about this questionnaire.
Okay, so I'll just quickly recap. This is a modified ACEs screener that we developed to be utilized with families. So we are not screening the children. We're screening with the families at kindergarten registration so that we know for all of our incoming kindergartners and also our transient population. We have a very significant transient population and homeless population. We use it with those families as well to help us know what are the other things that we need to be thinking about with this kiddo that might not be readily apparent to us in our given day. And so like the first year that we used this, we had an average of 4.9 for the ACEs screener. And so any child with a 4 or a higher is automatically referred to tier 2, whether it's for violence, grief and loss, what have you. And so we found a lot of success with this. And like I said, I'm more than happy to send this out to you directly. Okay, yep.
All right. So in our trainings with our teachers and as well in our conversations with parents, we are helping them understand child traumatic stress. And I've had so many conversations, anecdotally sort of with parents about some of these things like difficulty sleeping, school refusal, not eating, and that sort of thing, more so than any other year. So we're really trying to work with the families and my kind of sense of this whole thing since the pandemic is parents, kids that were sort of holding it together before that we might not ever hear from or need additional support are now coming out and asking for support around this. And how do they support a child who's been exposed to trauma? We also have a lot of students being raised by their grandparents. And so they have, of course, their family, they take them in, but then they realize, this kid has had some trauma exposure. How can I best support my grandchild? And by the way, I'm 80 years old and retired and disabled. So we do have some ability. I work with them one-on-one, but we also have the ability to refer them to a great program in the community for grandparents raising their grandchildren.
So these are just examples of tier 2 group interventions that we run. Some of them are done by the social workers, some are by school counselors. Our school psychologists run, I heard someone earlier talk about bounce back and CBITS, same here. Children of alcoholics, we have a licensed alcohol and drug counselor who works at our middle school and our high school. She does the prevention, intervention, and sort of all of that. So she runs Children of Alcoholics. She runs a newcomers group. Coping Cat is another one that we partner with mental health on. Choose Love is sort of like a local thing that's come out of New England. And so these are just examples of things that we do. And honestly, it changes every year based on the need of the population. So we really tailor our tier 2 interventions to what we're seeing the needs are.
Right. So we try to do the universal screener, maybe 6 weeks after school starts when the teachers have a chance to get to know their students. And then from that screener, we come up with a list of students who are really, either internalizers or externalizers, or have, an unmet need. And that's when we kind of decide what interventions we need to put in place. Most of our groups are only, 6 to 8 kids, which is kind of an ideal number. So, they're all evidence-based. A lot of it we get free off the SAMHSA website. But one of our most successful interventions is check-in and check-out, which we call CHICO for short. So we have any staff member at the school can be a CHICO mentor, and we train them, and just kind of what the purpose of this is. And a lot of it is really just based on building that.
SAMHSA is it's the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. So SAMHSA, SAMHSA. I think that's the question that you're asking. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
James will find it for us.
I can send it to you.
So he's already doing it. He's already out there. All right. So we use CHICO, and it has, thank you, James.
Thank you, James.
Or John, thank you. So it has, so it's all about that relationship with that student, having one person that they connect to. And it's actually typically not a teacher they have at the moment. It could be the gym teacher. It could be a teacher from another grade. And so they check in with them in the morning, like, what's your goal? And it's a very simple 0, 1, 2 scoring sheet. So what are your goals for the day? And then we have our pride expectations, which is sort of our universal standards for behavior in the school. And so every class, a teacher checks in with that student who's involved with CHICO and just gives them a quick score and talks about how things are going. At the end of the day, they see that same mentor and, get appropriate praise or feedback or whatever. And then any student who's part of this check-in and check-out, we try to have a quarterly celebration. If as a group they met 80% or more of their goals. I'm really summarizing CHICO a lot. If we can give you the information on where to find that as well, but it's been really successful to the point where kids hear about other kids being involved in CHICO and they ask if they can. So it's a very simple intervention, which has a lot of impact, and it takes 5 minutes a day.
So I know a lot of you have already talked about this. I think most of us on this in this cohort have a school-based mental health program that we're trying to implement of some sort. So for us here, we have partnered with our community mental health center. They come on site. We have a school-based clinician at the middle school and the high school 2 days a week, who sees the one-on-one kids, so clients, who also does, it's kind of new for us through this grant. We're trying to have them do tier 2 groups, and that's kind of been slow going for us, honestly, to get them to shift in that direction. They're kind of like in a fishbowl, like out of water, putting a clinician in a school environment. It's been very interesting. But one of the ways that we found success with this, and you can quickly explain how you do this, is using a facilitated referral process. So do you want to explain what that looks like?
Sure. So typically our referrals for mental health come out of our tier 2 or tier 3 team meetings, where we have a student and we have like entrance criteria for being considered a tier 2 or tier 3 student. So maybe they are identified as a tier 3 student. They have, excessive absences, failing grades, they got an office discipline referral twice in 1 week. So then we start to look at, okay, there's these different factors, what's going on in the student's life, and do we think that a mental health referral would be appropriate? So when we do that, we do a facilitated referral. So I or the school counselor would call the parent and just say, hey, these are some of the things we've noticed. We'd like to do this referral. Is that okay? Obviously, we have to get their permission for this kind of counseling. And then we then pass that along to the clinician who's right in the school. So we like to reserve, because she has such a limited number of spots during the day, we like to reserve this to refer students who otherwise would not be able to get to a mental health center. So either their parents work really long hours or they don't have transportation. So them getting to the mental health center that's down the street is pretty unlikely. So being able to see a counselor right in the school eliminates that barrier.
It's almost like a soft handoff, if you will. And in our contract with our mental health provider, we have it in there so that any kid who is receiving those services on site, the parents have to sign a waiver allowing them to talk to us about it, so that the school-based mental health clinician can actually be an active member of our tier 3 team and really help the school to determine how to better wrap around that student as well. Really quickly, I mentioned this already, we have a licensed alcohol and drug counselor who also sees kids one-on-one. She's been so successful that kids self-refer to her, which is amazing for us. Her caseloads are packed. Her days are just completely full. We have tremendous substance misuse issues in Laconia. And so she has just been a tremendous asset to us. And I don't know how we will never have her because there is such a need. And we just seamlessly put her in our tier 2 and our tier 3 groups as well for that work.
We also, if any student is caught with a violation for like a substance in school, like a vape or marijuana or whatever, they're automatically referred to her. And we ask that they see her at least 3 times as part of sort of their restoration process. And then often they continue to see her because they want to.
And sometimes they even have the ability to lessen the exclusionary discipline that they would have received otherwise if the family agrees to start getting counseling moving forward. Really quickly, another big bang for your buck. We, with all of our community partners, developed, and this is right on our website, a community resource map. This is an interactive map. You can't tell that from the picture, but when you hover all over the icons, it pops up and it tells you what it is, and you can click on one, and it takes you to a very comprehensive list of all of the providers in that area, in our area, with contact information, general information. So when you hover over and click on the substance misuse page, it really is awesome. The social workers use it every day with families. They can say, oh, you're looking for housing? Let's click on that right now. And if they don't have Wi-Fi at home, they can print a hard copy and give it to the parents to take with them. Often our families, even our poorest families, will have a cell phone, so they can show them where to find it on their cell phone because it is so interactive. We've even branched out of our city and gone to the ones around us where there might be other extra services available to them. And this has been huge. We just have to maintain it and constantly updating it to make sure as things change that we update that information. But that's been a huge success for connecting families. Yes. Who is this? Sonia, curious about.
Okay, we got a few questions.
I will send the link. It's right on our website, so I can send you the link. Okay, so our core management team are our community partners who come together, whether it's part of this grant or other work. So police, family resource, mental health, public health, parents, community partners, social workers. We developed this together and we maintain it. So myself and our marketing coordinator really are tasked with that. Do we have 2-on-1 in your area?
Yes,
too?
we do.
Yep.
We do. However, they tend to give the, sort of the more general information. If you can go to the top.
Yeah, I was going back to the other question. Yeah, we just developed it ourselves organically with our community partners at a monthly meeting. We just started doing it at our monthly meetings. And then we just built it in our website here in the district. And so everybody has access to it.
And we do maintain it. So between the marketing coordinator and the social workers, we maintain it. But back to the 2-on-1 question, sometimes we'll know just like local knowledge about a church that's giving away free meals this week. In fact, we have the Boys and Girls Club since COVID began has been giving every single night of the week, Monday through Friday. There's a free meal. Anyone can come. You don't have to, you don't have to fill out a form or tell why you need it. And that's something that 211, the state resource, wouldn't necessarily know. So we try to incorporate all that sort of really local knowledge as well.
So the School-Based Mental Health Center is a contract that we hold. If a student doesn't have insurance, which is rarer these days simply because of the laws around insurance, we have had numerous cases where it's sort of like a case by case where for whatever reason, Johnny's mom hasn't finished the paperwork to access the insurance. We'll actually cover the cost in our contract with the mental health center for them to see that student so that there is no time lapse and a kid receiving services that needs it. So if insurance is not in place, we cover that difference until it is in place. And the social worker then works with the family to try to get through whatever paperwork issues that they're having, whether it's private or public insurance. So that's a really good question. Okay, so, there's more questions. Okay, hang on, let me scroll down. Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay. Did we miss any questions?
We maintain the documents. Yep.
Okay. Well, I think we answered them all.
Awesome. So this is you, Melissa.
Oh, this is my favorite part of my job. So home visits. How many of you raise your little hand thingy? Oh, we can't see them. Do any of your school districts do home visits? So we are so fortunate. Yes. Yay.
Thank you,
Rebecca. We are so fortunate to have a social worker or pre-COVID. Yes. Okay. Yep. Or similar position in every building. So we have the ability when there is a, warranted reason to go and do home visits. It's such a fantastic way to engage families. So there are specific reasons we might do a home visit. So any student who's suspended out of school for 3 or more days, we started piloting this a year ago and it was very successful. So we're still doing it. So if they're suspended, the social worker will go out, first reach out to the family and offer it. So this is not a forced home visit. This is an available resource to you. We can bring your students books or homework that they, say they got
food,
right, or food or whatever. Say they got suspended for smoking in the bathroom and they just had to leave without their stuff. So I can bring your kids' backpack and their books and homework from their teacher. And I'm just going to check in and say, these were the consequences your student received from the school's point of view. How are we dealing with this at home? Are you looking for some resources? More often than not, the parents are like, my kid's vaping, I don't know what to do. And that starts a great conversation about substance misuse and referring to some resources in the community about how a parent might be able to deal with that. And sometimes it's like, hey, you know what? If your kid is suspended and they're sitting home all day playing video games, what's the lesson they're going to learn here? Let's talk about some other strategies. And so there's a lot of parenting education there too.
And hygiene supplies is another big one that we provide, and clothing for families.
We get a lot of donations for hygiene and clothing.
And when COVID sort of took over, home visits certainly changed. They no longer went in the homes, but they would go knock on the door and back up 6 feet. There was a big window of time where it really didn't feel like our DCYF was doing a lot of that they should be doing. And so it really fell into the school district to really just try to get eyes on the kid, just to make sure that, are you okay? Are you surviving? What do you need? We did virtual check-ins as well. We used DoxyMe, a telehealth portal, but we really had to change up the way that we do it. As more of us are getting fully vaccinated, that's helping us in many ways. Our police department's fully vaccinated as well, so our SROs can go with them now as well.
And it really tells the parents when their kid has some truancy issues, and I show up the door with the school resource officer, and we're just here to help. Like, what can we do? What's going on? Are there barriers? And then it's usually like just the floodgate opens right to, oh my gosh, this happened and I've had to take a night shift and my husband was in the hospital and we just need some help in the morning. And you start, and I think they feel like you really care because you actually came to their door and you're like, we're worried about your kid. We haven't seen him in 6 days. Do we encounter resistance? Sometimes. And there are times that our SRO doesn't like it, but I tell him to sit in the car. If I think a family might not be open to that. I mean, our policy, our protocol is to always take 2 people. So if I think an officer is going to exacerbate the situation, I'll take another social worker or I'll take our nurse. So it depends on the situation. But there are times that, if we know a family that's had a lot of police contact and that's not going to go over well, we don't bring a police officer.
And I skipped over our last slide because time is running out or is out. And basically that slide said we're trying to do restorative justice through this project and we're not crazy successful, but we're really trying. COVID's put up a lot of barriers because I really wanted to get to this piece. We have developed with the police department, the school district, and the Family Resource Center. We went into, we have a very comprehensive agreement with the 3 entities, and we worked with Primex, which is our liability insurance company for all of us. And we developed a release that police officers can use when they're domestic violence, they're in a home and there's 2 little kids and Johnny just watched his mom get beaten up, or Johnny's dad got arrested for drugs and is incarcerated now. There was an overdose and Johnny saw it. Whatever the reason is, the police department now has this release form that we spent about a year developing. And if they can explain it to families and get them to sign off on this release, it gives the police department the ability to give the contact information, basically the form that they fill out, to the Family Resource Center. And then the Family Resource Center can say, okay, 2 of these kids are in a Laconia school. They then send us the encrypted information. If it's a kiddo at Melissa's school, they send it to Melissa and myself, and it's an encrypted process. So that allows us to, all of us, immediately wrap around these families. So now we know that when Johnny comes to school and he's acting behaviorally off the charts in a way we've never seen, instead of there being these punitive exclusionary discipline consequences, we know right away we have to wrap around this kid because he's been through some significant trauma. And then there is an ACERT coordinator at the Family Resource Center who essentially becomes a one-to-one social worker with the family and pairs up with that family moving forward. And through this, we've been able, and this grant has helped us also provide trauma-informed training to all of our police officers. And that's an ongoing process, mental health training to all of them. Same thing to all of our community providers, because we know that police officers see more than any of us see and their hands have been tied. Now we have a way that they're not tied. And this is a model that was developed in Manchester, New Hampshire, but we've modified it. And in fact, there's legislation, federal legislation right now where they are trying to make this a national program. It's just really incredible. And we've had so much success with it. The number of families that we serve that we would not have been able to serve in that way before has really changed the way we operate. And again, that is a community partnership that made that happen. All right.
We talk a lot. Sorry, we talk fast.
So I'm trying to look at the questions now. It seems a lot of these youth challenges are ID'd at school, occur at home. Yep, so community-based partners provide schools a heads up if they have the ability to do so. That's a great question. Another example, our Child Advocacy Center in years past never had the legal ability to let the school district know that they were working with a family or a student, maybe the student was sexually abused at home. We went into a memorandum of agreement with them so that if they get a release from the parent, they now can also let Melissa know, as an example, just so you know, it's not on anyone's radar because it's so hush hush, but we're working with Johnny and this is why. And it's created this back and forth that we didn't have the ability to do before. So Carlos, we love you. And yes, I can share MOUs, I can share anything. So
the other thing is middle school students talk. They come and they're like, oh my God, this is what happened on Saturday.
Yes,
so we end up hearing about it, even if it happens not during school hours. And we just pull the kids in and touch base in a really casual way. And if they're wanting to disclose stuff, that's when it happens.
Melissa was almost late for our presentation because she was driving around tracking down kids.
So we had 2 kids that didn't show up today and their grandmother thought they were at school. So I'm leaving to go pick up lunch and they're walking down the street. I was like, hey, get over here.
Get in the car.
Get in the car. We're going to school. So no, it's been a great community, really, with tons of support for our positions and the work that we're doing. Thank you so much.
You guys did amazing. I mean, that was a lot of information to cover and y'all talked super fast and a lot of information and it's great. I know somebody had a question if the presentation was going to be available. It's on the top of the chat, but we're going to also make sure it's included both in idea boards and Basecamp. So you'll be able to have that. Also, I don't want the conversation to stop here. What I really want to create is a peer learning community where you all can feel free to reach out to each other. I think you've heard really amazing things that are going on in Laconia. I've had conversations with Rebecca in Austin about their school-based mental health center, and the work that they're doing there sounds amazing as well. And I know a number of community or number of schools are doing something similar.
Can I ask a question, James?
Yeah,
Is it possible to use Basecamp as the modality to upload the samples of MOUs and our referrals and links to our website? And John's nodding very vigorously. Okay.
Yeah,
great.
yeah. I mean, I would
have a running list. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I one of my things that woke me up this morning was saying I hadn't thought or I hadn't put the message out there about using Basecamp to share job descriptions. So what are your job descriptions that align with the work that you're doing? What are some of the MOUs you have with community-based partners, health providers, sometimes police departments, to be able to access information? I know one of the things you're talking about was police connecting with community or to schools when something happened. There's a really great program that I cannot think of for the life of my head right now that does that as well. So I'm going to make,
I know what you're talking about. Gloves.
Handle with care.
Yes, we have heard of that. Yeah.
I am good at that game. You can say random things and I will get it. I think there's one of the things that you guys had mentioned, not you, Mackenzie and Melissa, but everybody, was talking about was challenges at home and behavioral health issues. So, you know, this is a conversation that we're going to continue. We have a couple of partners that work directly with law enforcement when there's a violent incident at home to be able to address the immediate impact of that trauma and connect with them throughout the entire process. And they also connect with schools as well, working to bring them on board for potentially a webinar, future webinar, as well as organizations that work with hospitals and community health providers and understand the impact of trauma that they see. And they also connect back to the school. So we're always trying to find ways that community-based partners and organizations can connect back with the schools, because you are often the most critical and consistent link to young people. I know we're running into the break time, so I would say if anybody has more questions, feel free to put them in the chat or in idea boards, and we're going to take a 15-minute break now before we hop on with Mentor. Catch y'all later.
Thank you.